getting into, Jane, was the fact that...
All right, just a minute now. This is Jane Warbington speaking. Today I'm interviewing Virginia Strong. Virginia lives at 205 White Cliff Court, Dover Place on North Limestone. Our topic today is Planned Parenthood. This is Wednesday afternoon, June 1st, 1988. Virginia, I think I'll start you off here. First, I would like to ask you, what was your role in Planned Parenthood?
Well, I first became interested in Planned Parenthood as a patient in 1935. And then when they decided that they would make a full-time operation out of Planned Parenthood, they were interested in my coming to work as a receptionist. We had a part-time nurse at that time, and they increased that to a full-time nurse and me as a receptionist. That was the staff, and that was augmented, of course, by many volunteers from Young Women's Mission. Young Women's Mission had started the project in 1935. I went to work for them in 1949. The clinic was really floundering at that time, and I know I was hired on the basis of working for a year to see whether the thing was going to go or not. We changed the name of it because we were getting a lot of flack from the community about the clinic, and Mother's Health Clinic was not a very good title for it. So they renamed it Family Relations Center and added marriage counseling to the program in order to be able to talk about counseling and bring in the birth control program as a sort of a side issue. And that very quickly, of course, marriage counseling was really in the forefront then. Colleges were offering courses in marriage and the family and so forth. So that program soon got too big for the center. And at the time there was a demand for counseling, so the agencies got together in town and decided they would do something about a family service agency, and Family Service Agency was formed at that time. So then we changed our name in later to Planned Parenthood.
What agencies are you referring to now? Was there another agency besides Planned Parenthood who was involved?
Yes. At that time, Lutheran Intermission was doing a lot of counseling. Of course, that's since it's no longer in town. But they had a fairly good-sized counseling program. The Dominican nuns, there were several ministers who were interested in a full-time counseling service, and at that time we relinquished our counseling caseload to Family Service Agency when it opened. Young Women's Mission was instrumental in their first budget too. I think that's really not too well known, and but then as the center grew, we kept outgrowing space and kept moving, and until now, of course, it's a really big clinic. And,
could you tell us where the first clinic was started and the different places where you had to move as you grew?
The first clinic was in two small hotel rooms of the old Bookwalter Hotel, which was located at the corner of Limestone and High Street on the northwest corner. It moved from there to the old Morris Plan Bank building that later became the Guardian Bank, later became the Security National Bank. We were in that location until 1949, when we moved to the Columbia building at the corner of Columbia and Fountain Avenue. Then as the program kept growing, Young Women's Mission had to find some way to help finance the operation. So they opened the Nearly New Shop on Columbia Street at 10 West Columbia. And they moved the clinic then from the Columbia building into the building with the Nearly New Shop on Columbia Street. That, of course, with the advent of the pill and other new methods of contraception, more money into the program. The High Department of Health had become interested in the program and gave us some funds. So we then moved to 409 North Plum Street in Dr. John Burnett's old office. And we took the downstairs of that house, then we took one of the upstairs apartments, and then both upstairs apartments. We had staff even in the closets, and because the caseload was growing so rapidly. When I went to work for Planned Parenthood in 1949, the caseload was about 250 active cases. When I retired in 1981, there were 6,000 active cases. The staff had grown from a part-time nurse and secretary to about 38 employees, including the doctors. Then every nook and cranny of the 409 Plum Street was full, so we then moved the clinic after about 8 years in that building to the present site of the clinic in the RQ building, where they have the entire 6th floor of the RQ building for the clinic, and about a third of the 5th floor is the clinic offices. They also have branch clinics in Urbana, Ohio, Bellefontaine, Ohio, and Sydney, Ohio, that are part of what is now Planned Parenthood West Central Ohio.
But you started to tell me that you started out as a receptionist, but your role in Planned Parenthood also grew over the years. I think I would like for you to tell us about that.
I started as a receptionist in Planned Parenthood in 1949, but as the program grew, I had the opportunity to grow with the program. I then became the secretary of the program, then executive secretary, and then executive director of the 5-county program. At that time, we also included Greene County, but Greene County was later taken in by Dayton because it was closer to them. For the last 20 years of my employment with Planned Parenthood, I was the executive director.
Well, you've kind of answered my next question. I was going to ask you if, for what reason was the clinic opened, and also, did you have immediate patients? Was there an immediate response?
When the clinic opened in 1935, the response to it was very slow. Of course, it was a Depression-born project. It was still very, very controversial. The caseload was brought in primarily by mission members who made home visits on prospective patients whose names they received from welfare departments and from women's organizations, and it was rather slow to grow. And then, of course, during the World War II years, it was very hard to get doctors, and the caseload was growing very slowly. But the real shot in the arm to the Planned Parenthood movement, I think, was the government getting interested, new methods of contraception, a new morality, and of course the biggest thing really was federal funds. We got the first grant of money we got was due largely to the Ohio Department of Health through the Dayton, my friendship with the Dayton Planned Parenthood director, and I helped them get Dayton started. But their health director became very interested, Dr. Vogel in Dayton became very interested, and he was able to get them grant and aid money from the Ohio Department of Health. So I applied for a grant and aid money, and Gene Acton helped me write that first proposal. And I think, if my memory serves me right, it was $20,000 that we received, or $25,000 the first time. And then I think we got that money for a couple of years, and then I was able to horn in on a meeting that I heard was being held in Chicago. And I met a wonderful lady doctor, Dr. Effie Ellis, and she helped us get our first HEW money. So by the time I left the program in '81, the budget was around $500,000. We started, when I went to work at Planned Parenthood, our budget was $10,000 a year, and that included my salary.
How did you go about charging the patients that came in there? As a Young Women's Mission member, I know that you gave free information, but could you explain a little bit more about that, about how you went about charging? Because I know there's some people that were able to pay and some not.
Well, early on it was rather probably a hit-and-miss system about it, and left it largely up to people as to whether they wanted to contribute money for their supplies and their services. And then as we got into a more advanced program, we charged according to their ability to pay. We had a sliding scale of fees. We had a lot of assistance. Of course, Planned Parenthood, we were not loners in this movement. We had several levels of organization. We had a state, in the beginning we had a state league for Planned Parenthood, and that finally went into, was the State League for Birth Control. And that finally developed into Planned Parenthood. And then we had a regional setup, and then, of course, national, Planned Parenthood Federation of America. And we received a lot of help from them as far as setting up fee scales and so forth. So, and of course now, since government funds have been cut back, I think patients are probably paying more. And the biggest thing I think that happened to Planned Parenthood as far as funds were concerned was when the Title X legislation was passed, and this is where we got a good amount of our money. And then after that, there was a Title IV-A legislation that brought us in money, and those Title IV-A was canceled, and of course Title X has been cut back considerably, and there just needs to be a lot more money go into the movement because it's slipping backwards.
Since you're not really involved as much now in the financial end, I do know that the Nearly New Shop has been very successful, and I probably shouldn't quote this, but I think this year they gave them something like $28,000. But that Nearly New Shop has just really gone. It just keeps getting, it grows and grows and grows. Here in Springfield, did you get a lot of public support? Was there anyone that gave you a lot of problems? The newspaper, or could you elaborate on that a bit?
We have had over the years lots of opposition. Of course, due to the feeling of opposition about abortion, even though Planned Parenthood locally does not and never has and probably never will do abortions, that has hurt us. But if abortion could suddenly disappear from the earth and not even be heard from again, there would still be groups against the family planning movement. So we had some forthright opposition from the Catholic Church over many years, and the Right to Life organizations, fundamentalists, and of course the medical community was slow to accept family planning from the very beginning. There was a lot of talk of whether it was a medical or a social issue or a moral issue, and so we have had our opponents. But of course our biggest, staunchest backer over all the years has been Young Women's Mission, and I hope the clinic never severs those good ties with Young Women's Mission, because the roots of Young Women's Mission just reach out so far into the community that it's unbelievable. And of course, when we went into all the federal funding, we had to have matching money. Everything was matching money. The better you could get in the match, the better funding you could get. And Young Women's Mission was always right there to provide that matching money.
I hope I've covered most of the information that I would like to have to write this story about Planned Parenthood. I know they've had their ups and downs, and but they've had a lot of support from Young Women's Mission, and I am going to do an interview with some of the gals who are still around town that set up the Nearly New Shop. And so I know I'll get a lot of input there, too. Plus, I will be giving the Historical Society a copy of this history, which was written by a Wittenberg student, I understand. Antioch, I'm sorry. It was an Antioch student. Barbara Turoff. Okay. Well, if you can't think of anything else you would like to add, Virginia.
Well, why don't I'd be glad to, have you come. I would be glad to have you come talk to me again after you've assembled some of this material. I feel like I've been kind of erratic in the approach to it, but I think once you read this history of Turoff's, it'll help you a great deal in getting this together. Of course, now she dealt with the history. She didn't get into any funding or methods or that sort of thing, but I think that that will be of utmost help to you.
I really don't know. I haven't been in Springfield that long myself to know a lot of the physicians who were involved, but I know that Dr. Sue Jackson has been a great supporter down at Planned Parenthood, and I think she is still involved down there. I believe so. I know I've heard a lot of interesting stories by some of the octogenarians here in town who are now gone, like Helen Dock and Fran McKee, and yes, I probably should talk to Kitty Allman.
Jane McGregor, too.
And Jane McGregor.
Liz Cole and Jane McGregor. Liz Cole ran into me. Well, I knew this, of course. I had Elizabeth Cole, as a customer in the job I was working in before I came to Planned Parenthood. And she thought I would be a good one for the job. Janie McGregor was the one who interviewed me then and hired me for the job, and on the basis of a year, and I stayed 32 years.
Okay, well, I think we'll wrap this up now, and if I see the need to come back and talk with you, I will. And thank you very much.